Reflecting upon the psychological totalitarianism. That actually, as it is, doesn't quite make sense because grammatically that doesn't make sense. You'd have to say the psychological what of totalitarianism? Like, what are you trying to say there? Like the psychological abuse inherent to totalitarianism? I still like the psychological. Reflecting upon the psychological abuse inherent to totalitarianism. Now, that's still kind of broad. It's not really like a very specific contextual link. Does everyone see that? So you could go more specific on that. I'm not sure which one we had in there, but I'll keep going. Orwell continues his motif. See how you're saying continues his motif? You don't really want to use language that would suggest you're being repetitive throughout the essay. Do you guys see that? He's almost suggesting, he's saying continues, like I'm going to make the same point now. I'm going to make the same technique. Now, I understand why you've said continues because it's a motif, but try to avoid that language if you can, right? So the motif of what kind of suppression as well. Like it's so vague at the moment with the suppression thing. Like what's the actual motif in particular? Like the ghost thing it's a motif of morbid imagery. What about that? Reflecting upon that, Orwell's motif of morbid imagery. See, it's a motif of morbid imagery. And then you can say, comma, for example, in Winston's characterization as a, do you guys see what I'm doing here? As a, and then I eliminate the part of the quote that won't make it flow. So lonely ghost. Does everyone see that? For example, in Winston's characterization as a lonely ghost uttering a truth that nobody would ever hear, do you need this bit of the quote now? So what in your effect relies specifically on that second part of the quote? Which word? Well, wouldn't we be able to say that Big Brother has a reach over his vitality by saying he's a lonely ghost? Look, reason I see where you're coming from. Reason I'm bringing this to your attention is it's ideal for you to find a reason to narrow it down, right? So it's better to just have a shorter quote. Like having more of the quote is not better, and I think you can get away with not having it here, in my opinion, right? So just take my word for it. It's better to shorten that quote as long as it's still connected to what you're saying. Because you say lonely ghost, clearly it's morbid imagery. Reflecting upon that Orwell's motif of that, now you want to say advances. Now, do you see again what's the issue there with that word? Yeah, it implies you've talked about it before, but I don't want you to have talked specifically about it before because otherwise you'd be kind of repeating yourself. You should be making it, yes, your argument should be moving forward, but don't use language that would imply you're using very similar evidence, even if you are basically doing that. Does that make sense?